Brian Miller here, and today, for today's demonstration, I'm going to take some playing cards, some basic playing cards that you would get in any store, and we're going to use that as the starting point to build our own little mini journal. It's just going to be the size of the playing card, but using an accordion fold, opens up so you've got your inside, you have an outside, and it's all bound together as a nice little personal book. As part of the process in this demo, we're going to be using some gesso to prime the cards and get them ready for paint. We're going to be using some acrylic paint. We'll be using stencils, some oil pastels, some rubber stamps. We're going to be using some spray inks also. Come along and hope you enjoy the demonstration. Okay, I'm starting this project by laying out 12 playing cards. I'm going to tape them together with masking tape and just lining them up in a grid. And then I'll put gesso on the one side, then I'll flip it over and tape down the other side and go ahead and put some more gesso on it. By putting gesso on both sides, it allows the cards to remain a little more flat and they don't warp quite as much. Then I'm going to take some bits of an old book and tear them out and put them on the surface. I'm using matte medium to glue it down to the surface. Then I'm going to make sure they're adhered very well by using the roller over it and then taking a paper towel to absorb any of the extra glue that's there. Then I'm going to take my palette knife and apply my first layer of color. And then after that has thoroughly dried, I'm going to go ahead and add my second layer of color. By letting them thoroughly dry, the colors don't get muddy and they don't mix together quite as much. Then I'm going to use some spray inks just to give it a little more depth on the page. Now I'm going to take a stencil and I'm flipping it upside down so you can't really read the letters. I want them to appear as if they're letters, but not where people start to form words or start reciting the alphabet over it. What I'm going to do is go ahead and use a very dry brush with titanium white and just loosely scrub it in to the grooves in the stencil. Now I'm going to take some pastels and fill in some of the gaps. Again, we're just building layers on top of layers to give it a lot of interest, and then come back with some spray inks and then a little bit of paint again just to kind of even things out. Then we'll flip it over and start on the inside, and I'm going to start off by just laying some color down with the palette knife. Then tear off some bits of paper and using the matte medium again to glue those down to the surface, letting some of the blue spill into the pages. Press it down nice and firm and then remove any of the excess glue with a paper towel. Then we want this to thoroughly dry, and then I'll take a credit card and spread some lighter color over top of the whole thing and then add some marks using the oil pastels. Now I'm going to take the stencils using the same technique I use on the other side of just really using a dry brush and just scrubbing it in. And I'm adding some random marks just so it starts looking nice and layered. Then I'm going to go ahead and to tie it in, I'm going to go ahead and use some of the letters from the front backwards again and just sort of spread them out on the page. Then I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to go ahead and use a few squirts of the spray ink over top of it and let it drip and form some shapes on the page. Now I'm going to take my ruler and X-Acto blade and line it up on the seam between each card and slice right down it. This will separate them into the individual cards. Then I'm going to get a piece of fabric. This happens to be a fat quarter for quilting. And I'm going to go ahead and cut it into 1-inch strips a little bit taller than the height of the cards. Then select the 6 cards I want to use for my journal and lay them face down and put some matte medium on the back and then put the hinge, the piece of cloth, right over the seam. And want to leave a little bit of a gap between the cards so that they will fold easily. And I'm painting the matte medium right over the fabric and it will absorb right through onto the page. And just make sure it gets in there well and that you've covered it and pressed it down. Now we need to trim off the little pieces of the hinge that fall over the edge. So just again, line your ruler up in an X-Acto knife and just cut them off. and test to make sure it folds well. Now get out some tissue paper, the different colors, and your waterproof ink and your stamps. And we're going to go ahead and make some stamps of the bird imagery. And we're going to do it on a lot of the different colors just so we have some choices later. And the different rubber stamps that we have. And we're going to also do it on white because when we add the white to the page, it'll end up appearing clear. And we're using the waterproof ink because then we can paint over it without it smearing. Then once we have a number of stamped images, go ahead and tear around them. Just loosely tear without cutting into the image too much. And we're going to start placing them on the journal and see what sort of makes sense to us. Something gives a rhythm between large and small groupings and different color choices here. Whatever really looks good. Then take some matte medium and paint right over the tissue. This way it absorbs right into the background. You can see the background through the tissue. Okay, and after it's dry, completely dry, we want to trim off the little bits of tissue paper from the edge. Then to finish up the journal, we're going to take a stencil with the word fly on it, and I'm going to take some titanium white and just overlay it and add the final graphic. Well, I hope you enjoyed making this art journal with me. I think it turned out great. I really enjoy the way it looks. I'm pleased with it. But if you were like me and use a number of cards, you've got some left over. So in my case, I have a good 6 cards left over. And what you can do with these cards is you can still go ahead and make some art on it, some stamps on it, just like you did inside the book. But use these, like when you go to a restaurant, leave one behind. Use it as some abandoned art, where you take some of your art, just leave it out in the world and walk away from it. Let someone else be blessed by it and take it along with them. So I'm going to go ahead and make some changes and add some imagery to these, and I'm going to leave them behind. So see if anyone else has some enjoyment from those as well. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Found one.